Hello, my name is Scott Kistler. I'll be your teacher for this class, and in this video I want to give you an introduction to the discipline of geography. A discipline is a structured way of thinking about the world. Thinking about the study of geography really means that we're thinking about where things are. And it's been said that geography is sort of a companion to history. Whereas history studies how things change or stay the same over time, geography looks not at time, but at space. I don't mean outer space, I mean location, place, where things are. And it really means, in its etymology, the origin of the word, that it's geo and graphia, writing about the earth, writing about the world. And so it's not just description, though, where things are. Sometimes people think that geography is just memorizing state capitals and the names of oceans and rivers and countries. And that's important to know those things for geography. But the bigger picture is what's been called the why of where. This is in Alexander Murphy's book, Geography, Why It Matters. Apparently, it's not certain exactly who said that first, but it's a famous saying about geography. The why of where, in other words, where things are, where things happen, how things are connected across space, and then also the why of that. Why does that happen? Why do things happen? Why are they connected? Or why are they similar? Why are they different? Comparing different places, different scales is all part of the work of geography. And then we can also think about the where of why, not just the why of where, but the where of why. In other words, we're all trying to, in some ways, figure out the world, even if it's just our own individual lives. Geography adds that perspective to the why. It adds the where perspective to the why, and the why perspective to the where. If we're trying to understand how the world works and understand how societies work, geography adds that perspective of location matters, place matters. And so you can think of both the why of where and the where of why. Okay, now here's an example. This is a picture that's taken from outer space. And you might think, well, what is it? And some of you already may know what it is. And it is actually a picture from NASA that is the Korean Peninsula at night. Okay. And here's a picture where a similar picture where the borders are added in. And you can see that everywhere is pretty well lit up except for North Korea. There's a little dot in Pyongyang, which is the capital city. But everything else is pretty dark. So what's going on? Here's an example of where things are seeming to matter. If you're on the northern half of the Korean Peninsula, you have very limited amounts of electricity that's being used at nighttime, or at least of electric lights being used at nighttime. It matters pretty significantly whether you're in South Korea or North Korea, or say in China or Japan. Now, that's something that calls out for explanation of what's going on geographically, historically, and other disciplines can have something to say about that too. When we're thinking about what geographers study, we can think here about human societies across the globe, okay, their locations, their cultures, the way that they're similar to and different from each other. So it's even something just in that relatively small patch of the globe. We're thinking about here what's going on in North and South Korea. They're in the same peninsula, but something is different. Okay. Now, we also can think about the physical environments of the Earth, not just societies, but also, as you might be familiar with, thinking about in this map, you have the Sea of Japan, you have the Yellow Sea, you have the peninsula we've already talked about. These are all geographical features that are part of the physical environment of the Earth. And then we can also think about how human societies and physical environments affect each other. People affect the environment affects people. So societies in different physical environments can have very different characteristics sometimes. And there's a lot to think about here. And you might say, well, that's almost everything. And I think that's something that geographers would agree with you about. They do study everything with that on Earth anyway, with the perspective of the location and place and space, trying to understand the world from that spatial perspective. Okay. Now, what do geographers do? Alistair Bonnet, in his second edition of What is Geography, talks about 4 verbs that really explain and help us understand what geographers do. And the first is exploring, or they explore the world. Okay. It can mean reading, it can mean watching documentaries, it can mean doing research, and especially for professional geographers, it's going to mean getting out there, going to the places that you're studying, getting out in the wild. If you're talking about areas away from human settlement, or going into the cities in the world, the biggest cities in the world. It can mean going to rural areas. It can mean exploring farming, suburbs. There's a geography of almost any place. And these all have to do with the discipline of geography. Okay? So exploring is really important. And it's important to have a sense of curiosity, asking those questions of why are things the way that they are? How does their location matter? How does their location shape the rest of the characteristics that they have? How does the location shape their interactions between human beings and nature? Okay. The second verb is connecting, showing connections between the humans and the environment. The third is to map, making maps, studying maps, the mapping of the environment, of the earth. And then when you've done these things, geography is not just maps, but it uses maps. When you've done these things, there are connections that you have to make, to try to make. And engaging with geography, with these questions outside of the classroom becomes important too. Okay. Now, geography does have definitely an important perspective to engage with the world outside the classroom. For example, you might say, well, the city of Kankakee is right on the Kankakee River, and there are geographical questions there because the questions are, okay, how does that shape the history and the economy of Kankakee? How does the river work? What's happened with waste in it? What's happened with a lot of the sand coming in? How does that shape things? What about the river walk? Should Kankakee build along the river? What would that do to affect the environment? And then what would actually be good things to have right along the river that would both take advantage of the fact that, yes, there's a river there and protect the river and be economically viable? There's a lot of questions. What would you do to protect the native plants and the species that are there, the animal species that are there? Those are all geographic questions. Now, I started with that picture of the Korean Peninsula at night, so I want to talk about using some of these different verbs that Alistair Bonnet talks about to understand the Korean Peninsula. First off, we think about exploring the world. Here we see a bit of a different perspective than before, but you get a sense of the curve of the Earth here. And it's being taken from space. Again, you get this very small amount of light on the northern part of the peninsula, in contrast to both China and South Korea. We can see that there are these larger clusters of light, right? So Seoul, South Korea, is a major city. Pyongyang is a major city in North Korea. You can see various cities lighting up in China. So that's giving you an idea of where some of the major settlements in these areas are. Exploring gets us information, and it helps us to understand. And then we want to start to think about how to explain it, how to make connections, how to, as Alistair Bonnet talks about, bringing order to our understanding. We start to get information, and we want to try to see how it all fits together. How does it order? So we can think about connection. And one of the interesting things that is the case about North and South Korea is that um, there is a demilitarized zone between the two of them, okay? Right in between. And this demarcates the two countries, okay? Right, pretty close to the 38th parallel, the 38th line of latitude. And this is a map here made by the Central Intelligence Agency showing the demilitarized zone. And you might say, okay, well, okay, there's two countries, there's lots of countries in the world, but who cares? But one of the interesting things about the demilitarized zone is that it's been there since roughly 1953, since the end of the Korean War. And what does it have to do with anything? How does that connect? Well, there are human societies, two enemy countries, North Korea on the north, South Korea on the south. And this is a border that human beings have drawn and they enforce, and sometimes they try to violate it. And all these kind of things happen. But it's had some interesting effects too, because, for example, it's become a wildlife refuge. With this area that very few people go, there's been a real rebounding of wildlife in this region. Okay, so here we see the Hantan River, and part of the demilitarized zone here, and that gives you a sense here of the what things can look like in the demilitarized zone in a very nice area here. And there's these, for example, these red-crowned cranes that are have flourished there, and they're endangered. Also, the Asiatic black bear and all sorts of different animals there that are really able to flourish there because the area is really left alone by people. And so there's this connection we can make and say, huh, human beings have um, basically left this area alone for over 70 years, and it's led to something interesting environmentally. And so that's a way we can start to think about connections and ways to learn about some of these species. Apparently, some people are pretty happy because it looks like maybe those Asiatic black bears are breeding there. They're having little bear cubs. And that's really been good. That's helped a lot. These species that are not always doing so well outside the demilitarized zone. And the so those are how we can make connections with geography. Okay. Now here's a different kind of map. It's different kind of maps show different aspects of the Earth. The demilitarized zone before was focused on the demilitarized zone. That map here we have both a political and a topographical map. You can see the two countries in different colors to show. This is again a CIA map. Show these two different countries. Show the borders. Show how North Korea borders on China. But it also gives you an idea of the topography here too, where this is a mountainous peninsula. Okay, and that gives you this sense of the lay of the land. Okay, and it's also got the cities, so it gives you a sense of human settlement. Okay, this is a kind of map that can help you bring order to the understanding and get a sense of what these countries look like, and some different features too, both political and topographical. Okay, now if you wanted to make a map of transportation or just of topography, like mountains and hills and rivers, that would create a different map. If it was just topography, it might not even show the border between the two. And so different maps take different perspectives, and it's all part of using different perspectives to illustrate something about the Earth. Okay. Now we can also think about engaging. Okay, so we've gone through exploring, we've done connecting, done mapping, and now engaging. How do we start to think about the bigger impact of all this information we've gathered so far? Well, North Korea, we saw, was very dark at night. And one of the great tragedies of North Korea is that it is a totalitarian dictatorship, and it's been roughly for 75 years, since the late 1940s. And North Korea has really not done well. There have been recurring famines. We can see from the map or the pictures from space that there's not much electricity for lighting available in the nighttime. It has electricity, but it's not reliable. And So that's all part of life under this isolated totalitarian dictatorship. It's had three rulers, all from the same family, um, in the last 75 years. Okay. Now, here one thing we can see about this is that uh, there's a demonstrable difference between the height of say, a North Korean man and a South Korean man. Okay, that are probably because of nutritional differences. Okay, and they weigh, there's weight differences too. And so when we think about the impact that the line, the demilitarized zone has on North and South Koreans, it can be pretty dramatic. Okay, um, 3 to 8 centimeters shorter on average. That's, you know, 1.2 to 3.1 inches. Um, there's a difference in the nutrition that North Koreans and South Koreans get. Of course, it also makes a big difference if you're well connected to North Korea. I don't think that the Kim family that has ruled North Korea since its creation is probably starving. Um, so it makes a big difference here. And we could think about what are the effects of these different regimes. Okay, you could see uh, also about the effects of the division of the Korean Peninsula on the wildlife. It's kind of created a national park in a way, a wildlife preserve. And if North Korea and South Korea reunited, how would that affect the wildlife preserve, affect the wildlife in the demilitarized zone? Okay, it would certainly affect it because there would be people that would want to develop it. And all those questions of how would you bind back together two different countries? How would you manage this, in a sense, park that's grown up there? All these are geographical questions that geography can help you think through. Okay, and so I hope these can show you some of the ways that we can use geography to analyze some information about the world and how it gives us an ability to think things through.